A very good morning to you, Nigeria, and welcome to another edition of What's Your Take? My name is Dayo Akintobi, and I'm here, of course, as always, to talk about the major breaking headline news of the past week. Joining me to do that, as always, is my trusty sidekick and newscaster, Yetunde Afolabi. Yetunde, how are you today?
Good morning, Dayo. I'm very well, thank you.
A very fine morning to you too. How was your weekend?
My weekend was relaxing.
Wonderful. Everything's running smoothly in Nigeria now. We've got cash in our pockets. There's no fuel queues. Elections are done and dusted. We're sitting pretty, aren't we?
Yes, we are. We can't complain.
You can't complain at all. Lovely indeed. And we wish it could always be like that, that everything's rolling copacetically and nice and simply. All right, Nigeria, what do we have for you this week on our show? As always, I start with a little bit of light news for you. Yesterday in Adamawa State, we had a situation of, yes, we've got our first female governor. And then, no, hold on, no, we don't. Yes, we do. No, we don't. And there was some back and forth, and it was a mess. I mean, we got a declaration that says we've got our first female governor. We got an acceptance speech. And then all of a sudden, hold on, hold your horses, put the brakes on. There's suddenly a nullification of the declaration. It sounds very complicated. But fortunately for you all, you are very lucky. I have a legal mind, a legal brain in the studio with me today who's going to tell you all about the legalities of what happened in Adamawa State yesterday. The other thing I wanted to also tell you about is this football player in PSG, a team in France, who got married some time ago, earned a whole bucket load of money, and ended up in divorce court with his wife. And the court ended up ruling, the wife claimed half of his property in the divorce proceedings, and the court ruled that she wouldn't get anything because it turned out that all the man's assets were in his mother's name. Can you imagine that? Well, I was scrolling through Twitter Street over the weekend looking at some of the comments, and the first thing I saw was people saying, well, how come he put the assets in his mother's name instead of his father's name? And the responses were, if he had given it to his father, in a moment of weakness, his father would have transferred them all to his side chick. Can you imagine that? Then there were others who said, if it were a Nigerian mother, she would sow it as a seed in her church. Twitter, you won't kill us. You won't kill us, Twitter children, Twitter Nigerians, you won't kill us. But thank you for the good humor and for the jocularity. We enjoy going through Twitter and seeing what Nigerians think about global issues. All right, so let's get on to the substantive and major stories after that lighthearted moment. Joining me to take a look at the big stories that made the headlines last week is Jide Ogundimu. Jide is a solicitor and advocate of the Supreme Court of Nigeria. Jide was called to the Nigerian bar over 32 years ago. His firm, Jide Ogundimu & Co. Solicitors, deals with all aspects of law, including property conveyancing, landlord and tenant, estate and will planning, civil litigation, bad debts, private law, etc., etc. However, before I bring him on to discuss these issues with me, let's have Yetunde break down the news items for us, give them to us, then Jide and I will now engage on these various issues. So over to you, Yetunde. What do you have for us in the news today?
Adamawa rerun, pardon me. INEC suspends results collation over resident electoral commissioner's action in wrongly and prematurely declaring the APC candidates the winner. The biggest story of the week, which broke on Sunday, was that the Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, has nullified the declaration of the All Progressives Congress, APC, governorship candidate in Adamawa State, Senator Aishatu Binani, as winner of the election. Results were still being expected from 10 local government areas when the REC, and not the returning officer, declared her the winner. Describing the action of the REC as usurpation of the power of the returning officer, INEC faulted the declaration, saying it was null, void, and of no effect. It went on to suspend the collation exercise and summon the REC, the returning officer, and other involved officials to the Commission's headquarters in Abuja. Banana Island 7-story building collapses. State government alleged structure lacks permit. No fewer than 7 persons were rescued from the rubble of a 7-story building under construction that collapsed on Wednesday in the Banana Island area of Ikoyi, Lagos State. One dead body was recovered from the debris by Lagos State's Emergency Management Agency, LASEMA, workers. The Lagos State's Ministry of Physical Planning and Urban Development has said that no approval was given for the construction of the collapsed structure. The state government has since ordered that all development projects in the Highborough area be placed on hold pending an audit and integrity tests. According to documents obtained by the Punch newspaper, Lagos State has recorded a staggering 115 building collapses in the past 10 years. In 2022 alone, the state recorded 20 incidents of building collapse.
Okay, thanks, Yetne. I'm sure Jide will have a strong opinion on that issue of the legality of all these structural collapses. So let's have the next story, Yetunde.
On Peter Obi's detention at London Heathrow Airport, a case of impersonation. On Wednesday, the head Obi Dati Media, Diron Onifade, announced that the Labour Party presidential candidate, Peter Obi, was on Good Friday, April 7, 2023, detained in London by UK immigration officials over alleged impersonation. The Labour Party spokesperson said while the party continues to examine any dubious or political motive on the part of the perpetrators of the identity theft, it's had every confidence in the ability of the British authorities to resolve the matter to a just conclusion.
Okay, thank you, Yetunde. And finally, let's talk about the race for the Senate presidency.
Okay. Race for Senate presidency. No fewer than 4 northern senators have indicated an interest in the race for the Senate presidency, including senators from Kano, Niger, Zamfara, and the current Senate president, Ahmed Lawan, who is from Yobe State. The emergence of any of these contenders opens up the possibility of the number 1, 2, and 3 citizens of the country all being Muslim. Party chieftains of the APC in the South-South and the Southeast have called for the zoning if the Senate presidency to their regions in the spirit of fairness and to give other geopolitical regions a sense of belonging in view of the Muslim-Muslim presidential tickets adopted by the parties. All yours, Dio.
Okay, all right. So those are the headlines that we'll be looking at today. We'll take a short break, and when we return, I'll be joined by my guest in the studio. Stay with us, don't go away.
Hello, Alahaji. Right now I'm in Abuja. No. Hello, Adamu. Right now I'm in Kano. Yes. When I get back, I will just call you. Look, what is wrong with you? I'm talking on the phone and you are gesticulating and doing. What's wrong with you?
Daddy, where exactly are we as we speak?
Are you alright? This is Lagos.
Well, you just lied to someone that we're in Abuja.
Keep quiet. Who told you can tell an elderly person is lying?
Daddy, you just lied. And by lying, you're raising corrupt children for the future of Nigeria. That is corruption, not in my country.
Corruption not in my country.
Welcome back. Thank you for staying with us. In the spirit of still being lighthearted, I wanted to congratulate Dino Melaye for winning the PDP primary. So if he does succeed and goes all the way to the governorship lodge, it means we'll have a dancing governor on the one hand and a singing governor on the other hand. Can you imagine what it will be like at a meeting of the Nigeria Governors Forum with those two in the house? Boy, interesting times ahead. All right, Nigeria, my guest today, as I've introduced him before, is Jide Ogundimu, who is a lawyer, solicitor and advocate of the Nigeria Supreme Court. Welcome to What's Your Take, Jide.
Thank you very much, Dayo, and thank you for having me on your program.
It's lovely to have you here today, and I think we'll have an interesting and engaging time, especially since many of the topics we mentioned have legal angles to them.
Certainly. Yeah.
Absolutely. So let's look at the Adamawa rerun. I'm sure you've been following that, or at least you're aware of what happened in Adamawa yesterday in terms of the primary issue, of course, is that the resident electoral commissioner announced a winner while results were still being expected from 10 local governments, and it's not even the REC's job to announce any winner. That is the job of the returning officer. So INEC has nullified the declaration and called an emergency meeting in Abuja today. Of course, it's open season on the REC, and everybody's wondering, what was he thinking? What did he, was he coerced? Was he bribed? What was he trying to do? What do you think in terms of electoral laws? Are they written in such a way to avoid a hijack of the process as tried to happen yesterday? What does the law, how would the law address such an issue? I've heard people saying he should go to jail. I've heard some say he should be hanged, drawn and quartered. I mean, what exactly do you make of all this today?
It's unfortunate that you're having a situation like this, especially with the female candidates, who, if she does win the election, will end up becoming the first elected female governor of a state in Nigeria. What you have here is that you have the resident electoral officer, commissioner, yes, who has usurped the powers of INEC. What should really be happening? Apparently, the Electoral Act of 2022, 66 and 65, those sections provide that the returning officer who is or who should be nominated by INEC should be the one announcing the results. But what you had here, well, you had this gentleman, the resident electoral officer, suddenly announced
the returning officer.
The returning, well, the resident electoral officer.
You're right.
Suddenly announcing these results for no reason, when it should really have been carried out by INEC. Now, INEC now believe that their powers have been usurped and have decided to cancel the election, which is unfortunate for this lady. But however, it's a bit funny here, and the reason why I'm saying it's a bit funny was that the PDP candidate, who is the incumbent governor,
yes,
Fintiri,
yes,
had been leading,
yes,
and suddenly, without any warning, you have this residential electoral officer announcing that the winner is now Binelli. So it's a bit confusing, because then suddenly, votes suddenly appeared from nowhere. And then not just that, there were still, as you rightly said, there were still about 10 local governments.
Yes, whose results hadn't
come out yet. Yes. And so I just find it, you rightly said, and I said, I'm a lawyer, it's not right for me to suddenly say that, he's been bribed or whatever. I would love us to get to the bottom of it at some stage. And yes, they were probably right in them ensuring that there's an emergency meeting in Abuja to sort these things out. But one thing I would not like to see is another re-election. Because it is an election, it's cost the taxpayer money. Elections are extremely expensive. And the last thing you want to do is to, I'm not too sure who really won the election, but March 12th, it was null and void. And then suddenly you're now getting last Saturday, null and void. Where does it stop?
Where does it end? Yeah,
where does it end?
Absolutely.
So we hope that things will be sorted out in Abuja. And let's hope that the election is not to be run again for the third time.
Yes, my worry ultimately is that even if Binani ends up being declared the winner, her victory will be tainted, because people will look at what has happened now and think that it was a manufactured victory, and that might not be fair to her. And this is my concern, is that how does she get justice? Or even if Fintiri, who was leading, ends up being declared, there are some who will cry foul and say, but Binani had been declared. So either way, it's not going to be a clean outcome.
I think we can, INEC are meant to be competent and they are reputable. I mean, they're meant to be independent, and that's what they call the Independent National Electoral Commission. If they, I mean, because they counseled it, and if they find that there was no foul play involved in the election, and if she is successful, that is Binali, and if they announce that she is the rightful winner, then I don't think there should be any problem at all. I don't think so at all. If anything at all, I think, yeah, I mean, Finitri should accept defeat if he is defeated, and allow the gentle lady to take her place as governor.
Very good. So Nigeria, we continue to wait to see if we'll get our first elected female governor in the history of Nigerian politics. All right, Jide, Banana Island 7-story building collapses. 155 buildings collapsed in Lagos in the last 10 years, 20-something odd in 2022 alone. We remember the one in Ikoyi with the 4-score building, the tower, 1 out of 3 that came down and killed several dozens of people, including the developer himself. What do you think is responsible for these building collapses? The Lagos State government is saying the Banana Island building didn't have an approval. But if you say a building does not have an approval and yet you see work commence, you see the first floor go up, you see the second, the third, the fourth, buildings don't spring up to 7 floors overnight. They are a progressive development. And the Lagos State Building Control Agency has offices all over the place. So they're seeing this thing going up. Is it that they're not inspecting? Is it that they're not asking questions? Or is it that they've been compromised in some way? What can be done to arrest the spate of building collapses as causing loss of valuable human life?
Yes, it's funny you said this because this is a very complex topic, because I had actually written an article about this several years ago.
Okay.
And in fact, about 10 years ago to be precise. And the reason why the article was written was because there were lots of building collapses in Lagos State. I'm not just talking about the Banana Island or the Ikoyis, but we're talking about
across the entire state.
Across the entire state, there were places in Mushin, Agege, whereby when the rains came, they were collapsing and killing loads of people, and lots of people were being injured. And so I decided to write this article. To be fair with the Lagos State government, they did bring out some legislation under the Fashoda government. And this was this actually created an agency called the Lagos State Building Control Agency. The role of that agency is to ensure that building control and building plan is complied with. So, say for instance, if you are a builder and you build something like what you want in Banana Island, the first thing you need to do is obviously get planning permission. Now, the role of the Lagos State Building Control Agency is to ensure that this, planning is complied with. The right materials are used. If the right materials are not used, then they close it down.
So does it mean that they're negligent in their job or they are derelict in their duty if we're having this many collapses?
Well, that's exactly what I'm about to get to now.
Okay.
There are obviously the limitations it's unfortunate, and I'll tell you what they are. Point by point. The first thing is that half of these people are not experienced. The employees of the Lagos State Building Control Agencies, they are not experienced and they lack that exposure.
But then why should they be employed in that position to do something that has to do with human life?
Well, exactly, and that's the whole thing. I mean, when I wrote that article a few years ago, I was indicating to them, or to my readers, that what we need is that we need to ensure that employees or staff that are employed at this agency are up to date, the standards that were required of people like them, because we have lives at stake here. The other thing I was going to say was that there's also corruption. Somebody will go and inspect a building, for instance, and then find out that it's not up to standard. However, they will let it go.
Yes.
The other thing again that you have is infrastructure. They have lack of infrastructure to carry out these tests of buildings. And then you also have, again, lack of resources. People that are meant to be going around to ensure that, but they cannot deal with it. It's overwhelming for them. So that's the situation we have with the Lagos State, the challenges they're facing, the Lagos State Building Control Agency.
And there's also the issue of shoddy construction materials, poor quality construction materials.
Well, that is the job.
Well.
That's the job for the Lagos State Building to look out for. But obviously, they lack the resources to deal with it.
I understand.
So, for instance, you have on the 7th floor you have one of the slabs that broke.
And
that's what caused the collapse.
Collapse. Yes, of course. All right. Well, we pray for the repose of the souls of those. Well, I understand 7 people were injured and 1 person lost his life. But for everybody who's had a loss of life of a relative or injury to a loved one in any of these building collapses, we pray for the repose of their soul, and we also hope that the government will buck up and begin to oversee these things and regulate the industry a bit better.
Certainly.
All right, let's move on to the next topic because we are fast running out of time. Peter Obi was detained in London's Heathrow Airport. You lived in London for a long time. They say it's a case of impersonation. What does that mean? What are they talking about?
Well,
from a legal standpoint and from a UK resident standpoint.
Well,
what is that?
I'm aware that you have got lots of time, but I'm going to make this clear now. Everybody is subject to the rule of law. Nobody is immune from it. And as a matter of fact, I'm surprised that you see the problem we have in Nigeria is that we get too emotional. When Peter Obi is not an elected member of government or Nigerian government, so he's just like any other person. He goes through Heathrow like any other person. He's not been considered a diplomat or anything of the sort, but he's gone to Heathrow Airport. He's been flagged up as possibly someone involved in some form of crime, and like any other person, he's been investigated. He was investigated. They checked him out. They found that his story was true, and they released him. So I don't really think there's anything more to do with. As a matter of fact, let's think about it. A few weeks ago, I was at a Boris Johnson speech at the Marriott Hotel. I believe right in front of me was Peter Obi, and I remember Boris indicating that, well, everybody is subject to the rule of law, including himself when he was Prime Minister. As a matter of fact, he joked that I was persecuted for just having a cup of tea at my desk. So really, what I'm saying here is that the fact that he hasn't been persecuted, he hasn't been arrested. He's been not arrested. As a matter of fact, he's always been just called for questioning by the immigration officers, like what I would do, any of us would go through. So
no special privileges.
No special privilege for anybody.
We're all subject to the same.
Everybody's subject to the rule of law, and I'm happy it happened. That this is England, and that's what we do in England. I also practice law in England anyway, so I know what we all go through. So yes.
Thank you, Jide.
No
all right,
problem.
our final story today, as we're almost out of time. This race for the Senate presidency. No fewer than 4 northern senators have indicated an interest in the race for the Senate presidency. How does that strike you, Jide, that the number 1 and the number 2 citizens of Nigeria are Muslims, and in spite of the fact that the country has a delicate balance between Muslim and Christian, that there's also now a push for the number 3 citizen to also be a Muslim? Do you find it alarming that some people are considering making a Muslim the next Senate president? Will this not be the height of insensitivity? Having Muslims as number 1 and number 2, that Muslim ticket, already inflamed passions in certain quarters amidst unending claims and speculation of an Islamization agenda, whatever that means. I have heard that term thrown around all over the place. I've never really understood what it means, how you Islamize anybody. And so what do you think? Some people are saying, some of the senators, the northern senators are saying the Senate leadership should be the most competent person, that sentiments of ethnicity and religion should take a back seat, that the Senate is too pivotal to the progress and development of the country and the well-being of our people to begin to allow sentiments to prevail in terms of where somebody comes from or who they worship. And as a result, let's look for the most competent hands. And they are trying to say the most competent hands at this point in time and the most experienced are from the north, and that's all that should matter. How do you see this delicate balance in terms of religion and ethnicity in Nigeria today?
My take is as follows. The best man should go for the job, or the best man should be chosen for the job, not where he comes from or what what religion he practices or whatever. We just want the best man for the job. And if, I mean, this has been going on for years, I mean, especially in Nigeria. I mean, it starts off with states or region. It started off back in the 60s as we want an Igbo man here or a Yoruba man over there. Okay, they complied with that. You had this quota thing. And then now started with states. And now you have religion. Without being funny, religion is by choice. And that's the way I look at it. It's not embedded that you're a Muslim. I mean, if you feel that you're a Christian and things are not going well for you, then, then become a Muslim. And that's the way I look at it. I mean, you're not born. I mean, yes, you were born a Muslim. Your parents.
You're born into a Muslim family.
You're born into a Muslim family.
But you're not born a Muslim.
Exactly.
You're not born a Christian.
Yes, you can change it if you want to. But that's besides the point. My point here is that why don't we just get the best man for the job? And that's the problem we have in Nigeria. We don't get the best man for the job. We get a bunch of certain people because of their ethnicity and their religion, or, I mean, I was going to say color, but then again, we're all black here anyway.
Well, there's racism here, only we call it tribalism.
Yes, that's what you call tribalism, exactly. Yeah. So it's unfortunate. I'm actually against the idea. I mean, if the guy is a Muslim and he's good for the job, so be it.
So you'd be okay if all of our leaders came from one particular section of
if
the country,
if they're good enough,
worship the same God and looked the same way, spoke the same language, if they all came from the same place, as long as they made Nigeria better, you're okay with it?
Well, exactly. I'm actually surprised that these people are saying this, because if they really love Nigeria, they would actually want a better person, a person that is, good enough, equipped enough to do the job. You understand me now? Competently to have that job. But when you're now saying that, I want a Muslim, I mean, without being funny, a Muslim could be useless. And that's what you have anyway in Nigeria. You have people that were not meant to be in those posts.
A Christian could be useless.
A Christian could be useless as well.
A Buddhist could be useless.
A Buddhist could be
so
useless.
So what you're saying is religion doesn't determine competence.
It doesn't, exactly.
All right, thank you very much.
We should do away with this nonsense.
Thank you very much, Jide. We're out of time. And that's it for today, folks. Thank you for joining us on another edition of What's Your Take? A very interesting one with our guest today, Jide Ogundimu, solicitor and advocate of the Supreme Court of Nigeria. Jide, has been a very engaging time. I look forward that you should come back again when we have more time and we can engage the issues a lot more.
I really appreciate coming here. Thank you very much, Dayo.
Thank you, Nigeria. My name is Dayo Akintobi. I look forward to seeing you again. Here's wishing you a wonderful day and a great week ahead. Best.